Donald Trump is adding a new layer to the Arlington Cemetery controversy. He's now blaming Vice President Kamala Harris for part of the drama. Trump, as you may recall, was at Arlington on Monday of last week. He was there to mark 3 years since the tragic bombing at Abbey Gate in Afghanistan that killed 13 U.S. service members. The families of several of those fallen service members say they personally invited Mr. Trump to be there and to take photos with him at Section 60. Now, that is an area largely reserved for those who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. Political activity is not allowed on the property. A Trump campaign spokesman said on X that they were granted access to have a photographer and posted a document stating, quote, only former President Trump may have an official photographer and or videographer outside the main pool area, unquote. Now, National Public Radio first reported a physical altercation at Section 60 between Trump staffers and a cemetery employee who tried to stop the Trump staff from taking photos and video that was later used in a Trump campaign video that Trump shared on social media. The U.S. Army said Trump's team knew the rules, yet, quote, abruptly pushed aside, unquote, the cemetery employee. Now, the Trump campaign disputes that. They say there was no physical altercation and says the employee, quote, decided to physically block members of President Trump's team during a very solemn ceremony, unquote. Today, Trump says, quote, there was no conflict or fighting, unquote. Trump added, without any evidence, that Kamala Harris, quote, made it all up to make up for the fact that she and Sleepy Joe have blood on their hands for the incompetent Afghanistan withdrawal, unquote. My next guest comes from a big name in Republican politics. He does not make public appearances, but he is speaking out now because of what happened last week. I want to bring in Jim McCain. He is the youngest son of the late Republican Senator John McCain. He is also an Army intelligence officer who served previously as a U.S. Marine. Jim, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us why you called Trump's visit to Arlington a violation.
Thank you for having me, sir. Well, as you well know, sir, Arlington Cemetery is sacred to all people who have, all people who are members of the military, all people who have served in the uniform. It's a sacred area. There's 3 generations of McCains that are buried there. It's a violation because these rules are set in place. The people who are buried there don't have an opinion. The point of Arlington Cemetery is to go and show respect for the men and women who have given their lives to this country. When you make it political, you take away the respect of the people who are there.
So you're recently back from a 7-month deployment to Tower 22 in Jordan. That's near the border with Syria. 3 U.S. soldiers were killed there just this past January. This idea of a sacred space and grieving families, it's not just theoretical for you.
Yes, sir. I mean, I was not personally at Tower 22 when that attack happened, but after being directly on the ground right after, I understand the pain that we saw there, the young men and women who are serving there and what they went through. Once again, it's a solemn thing. You know, these young people are taking time out of their lives when they could be bettering themselves, you know, college, things like that. And they're joining the military because they feel it's the right thing. And the least we can do is, when they're gone, if they, you know, when they're in Arlington, is to respect the rules and regulations that are in place, like not politicizing the fact that these men and women are there. Go, show respect. I understand that he was invited. Show respect and leave. It doesn't need to be videoed.
Now, there is a difference between video from Arlington showing up in campaign ads and going to actually expressly film at Arlington for the purpose of a campaign ad. And we should note, because I'm old enough, I remember in 1999 when your dad, Senator John McCain, had campaign video that showed him walking through the cemetery. But after it was pointed out that some people thought that it was inappropriate, your dad called it a very bad mistake and apologized for it. If Donald Trump apologized for it and called it a mistake, would he earn any points back with you? Again, I recognize it's not the exact same thing, but I'm just wondering, because this really seems to have bothered you that Mr. Trump did this.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing about, you know, John McCain, you don't spend that long in politics without messing up once or twice. So, and the main point is that he pulled it down and he understood the solemn, you know, sanctified nature of Arlington National Cemetery. So if Donald Trump pulled it down and apologized, I mean, it would be the right thing to do. But look at his history towards veterans. Look, at this point, you know, I don't know what else he has to do, you know. The answer is no.
Yeah. So, I mean, This has been, as you note, Donald Trump has said a lot of things that have offended people in the veterans community. It may have started actually when he said that your dad wasn't a war hero because he was captured. That was back in 2015. And then there are all the other things that he has said and done, including what his former Marine General and Chief of Staff John Kelly said, that he said behind closed doors, and suckers, losers, etc. You were a political independent for years, and you just recently registered as a Democrat. Why the switch, and how much of you moving not into the Republican Party, but starting as an independent and now moving to the Democratic Party, how much of that is because of Trump and his effect on the Republican Party and his attitude towards veterans?
I mean, to begin, what Trump said about my father is irreprehensible. I mean, it's I've never forgotten it. And, to remind everyone, John McCain was my father as well. And, he was the guy I went to when I skinned my knee, So to hear those things said about him, I can never forgive. The one thing about John McCain is that he cared about his country and he lived his life that way. So as we moved on, and I was gone for a year, so I didn't have a chance to change. But as soon as I was back, I see, I care about my family. I care about equal rights of everyone in this country. I care about all this. And, as much as I stayed as an independent, I decided that, it was time to move on and do what I believe in. The fact of the matter that he said it constantly is country first. You have to think about your country first. However that is, care about your country. Care about how making it better, not being divided, but being together as one to continue to be the greatest country in the world.
Yeah, just as a factual matter, I mean, your father, first of all, a lot of people are taken prisoner during war, and your father was offered early release because his father was an admiral during the Vietnam War. His grandfather was too, and he declined early release because that's not how prisoners are supposed to be released. They're supposed to be released in the order of how they were captured, and that is the definition of heroic. What do other veterans say to you? Because obviously, just as a matter of statistics, most white men in this country are supporting Donald Trump, just statistically, and most white men in the military are supporting Donald Trump. What do you hear from when it comes to your former colleagues in the Marines and your current colleagues in the Army?
I mean, I think that it's just like anywhere else. I mean, veterans are people just like everyone else, and that's a plethora of diverse opinions. I think that people are still trying to figure out what's happening in this election and which way they're going to go, especially with Kamala Harris entering the race. And I think that just like any other group of people, everyone's trying to figure it out. It's a diverse group of people, and they're all trying to look. What's going to help the military? That's on the main thought for most of them. So,
the Arizona Republican Party is rather extreme, and I was talking about this with Senator Kelly earlier. But the idea that, according to polls, that they're about to lose another Senate race because they keep nominating people who are election deniers and not grounded in reality. It's a very different Republican Party than the one that supported your dad and Senator John Kyle, Barry Goldwater, and on and on. Were you going to become a Democrat either way, or did Kamala Harris play a role? And what has been the impact of the Arizona Republican Party on your beliefs?
I mean, I think the Arizona Republican Party is trying to express what they believe is the best. I mean, they did censor my mother and my entire family out of it, so they're choosing the path that they want to go. But I think one of the main points of switching over and coming over has been, like I said, I feel that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz embody a group of people that will help make this country better, that will take us forward. And that's really what matters at the end of the day, is, voting with your heart, voting how you feel going forward. And that's how I feel.
Jim McCain, thank you so much for being here. I met you when you were 11. Back in 1999. I don't expect that you would remember it, but I met you when you were 11, and I know your dad would be really proud of your service. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, sir.